Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Vamos a tener un buen programa para ti esta tarde. Vamos a tener a great show for you. Anyway, how are my people doing today? I trust everybody is doing just fine. I trust everybody is doing just fine. Let me get, whoops, I didn't start bring up my good old, para ver. All right. Happy MLK Day. I had a lot of MLK discussion today, which was real good. I had one on WBAI this morning on We Decide with Jenna Flanagan. And then I did one with Marlon Weems. Love that guy. Always get a good talk about the reality about MLK that a lot of people don't talk about. We also discussed that. I'm going to process that a little bit later and put that out. How are my peeps doing? I trust everybody is doing just fine. Welcome aboard, AVQ. AFK for a bit, I hear you, brother. He is here from Brooklyn, New York. Patrick Magner from Houston, Texas. We also have, let's see, ¿qué más tengo? Tomorrow is a big protest. Find your local rally. Free America. Yes, Paul Fleming from Powder Springs, Georgia. We also have in the house Joe from Los Angeles, California. In the chat right now, I just brought it up, so I don't have all those people in, but Len Rubin, welcome aboard. Laurie Snyder, Sloan. Rule of Laws, welcome aboard. Thank you all for being here. Couldn't do this stuff without you great people that come and listen every day. Hey, they're going great. They're going crazy on Greenland. And I think they want us to talk about Greenland, but I think it serves a dual purpose. Take Epstein out of the flag, but most importantly, it has a lot of other stuff to deal with. Michael, I see all those videos. You remember we had a deal. You're going to tell me what they were each going to be about so that I can know which one are pertinent to the program or how to fit it into the program, because I love the shorts that you always find. That is a great thing. Lita Bearcat from Austin, Texas says happy MLK Day. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and start the program with what I did this morning, and then we'll get right back to the show. I just want to talk about what I did with WBAI, with MLK, as well as with Greenland. Check it out. We'll take it on the other side.
On Saturday, President Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social, "Now, after centuries, it is time for Denmark to give back. World peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it." Adding, "The national security of the United States and the world at large is at stake." We'll look at what this means for the NATO alliance, as well as the escalating situation in Minnesota, where Reuters is reporting that the Pentagon has ordered about 1,500 active duty soldiers in Alaska to prepare for a possible deployment in the wake of ICE agent Jonathan Ross's fatal killing of 37-year-old immigration activist Renee Good, with our political panel Laura Jadid, a writer at firewalledmedia.com and an Army veteran of 2 tours in the war in Afghanistan, David Leventhal, Washington, D.C. correspondent and senior editor at Notice, and Egberto Willies, host of KPFT's Politics Done Right. Thank you all for joining me.
Thanks you for having us, Jenna.
Egberto, as I mentioned at the top of the show, today on this Martin Luther King Day federal holiday, we are focusing on MLK's legacy. So, do you have any thoughts on what he would make of this particular latest development in American politics, culture? I'm not quite sure which is the right one, but the fact that you do have this, as we discussed, unaccountable, cobbled together, roving army, and so many Americans feeling stuck as to what it is that they can or should do.
Check out, first of all, thank you for having me here. Secondly, Laura Jadid, great work that you did out there. Now, thirdly, to your question, Jenna, check out his five last speeches and his last book. He encapsulated everything that we're talking about today: militarism, the poverty, and capitalism. And those are the themes, the economic issues of those themes are what his last speeches were about. And Donald Trump and what he's doing, both in the cities, both overseas, are the encapsulation of everything this guy was fighting about. I find it amusing that right now, Reverend King is a star. He's a peaceful guy that everybody wants to love. When in those times, this society hated him. This is sort of a bait and switch issue that we're talking here with Martin Luther King.
I believe
I
Senator Booker referred to it as the Santa Clausification of MLK.
thank you, exactly right. And I think we do an injustice to MLK in having this facade that we're using right now as this peaceful guy that just wants these things. This guy made Bernie Sanders and other guys look like saints when it comes to what they really wanted for the economic structure, for the structure of capitalism, and the anti-militarism that he proved for, and everything that he spoke about. His death made us continue on this path that we're on right now.
Very, very true. Egberto, if the U.S. attacks Greenland, how do you see that reshaping the global order?
I think it. I think it's the end of the United States. I hate that nobody is speaking about it in that context. It's the end of the
Wow.
United
Okay.
States. And
Expand
here's
that because I've heard several people say the end of NATO, but not the
no,
end of the United States.
it's the end
Continue.
of the United States. We are, we like to believe that 4.5% of the population is the world. We may have the strongest military, we may have nuclear bombs, we may have all those things, but we have to remember that other countries have nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, etc. So they don't fear us. What they fear right now is that we still are based on an economic system that is run through SWIFT. As these other countries are putting together BRICS and many other financial instruments so that they can have negotiations, they are just holding time. Right now, the rest of the world has been lazy. The United States wanted to be the big daddy, and you know how it is when you create a certain level of dependency, it is easy. For the EU, it was easy to let the United States spend all your money on the military while they took care of their people. For the rest of the world, they took care of people. For China slowly built its military, but you know what? It also built resolve with the rest of the world. Belt and roads. The rest of the world loves China. You know why? Because China does its thing. It doesn't get into their political systems, etc., etc., etc. We look like the belligerent guy on the market, which even Martin Luther King in his last speeches and book spoke about as we go around the world and do what we're doing. So go ahead and invade NATO. You notice he kind of backed off of that, doing it with sanctions. So what he's saying, let the American people pay taxes for my proclivities right now. It's the end of America for many, many. In fact, America has already Donald Trump has already ended America as the rest of the world knows it. Because the rest of the world once said, America made a mistake when it elected Donald Trump the first time. But you mean you went ahead and did it a second time again? That ain't no mistake. So what are do you think they're doing? It'll take a decade for them to do what they need to do. But they're building up against us, and we, the American people, know nothing about it as the rest of the world continues to look at us as what's going to be the has-been of the world.
Wow. Well, in the remaining moments that we have left, I want to get each of your takes on what the Martin Luther King's most valuable contribution was as an activist, orator, religious leader, and citizen was. And Egberto, same question. Final
They
moments.
love Dave. What Dave just said. He spoke about the moderate liberal or the etc. About how they actually their silence is important. And if you look at what the media is doing with the way they misreport Greenland and every other issue, you can put that as a parallel to everything Martin Luther King stood for. One quick thing: Martin Luther King saved America because what happened is if he didn't come there with his peaceful message, people would have reacted like we react around the rest of the world when things are the way they were in America.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but I'd like to thank my guests, Egberto Willies, host of KPFT's Politics Done Right, Laura Jadid, a writer at firewalledmedia.com and an Army veteran of 2 tours in the war in Afghanistan, and Dave Leventhal, Washington, D.C. correspondent and senior editor at Notice.
All right, folks, here's the deal. For all of you who are listening to Greenland, Greenland has 2 purposes. It's great because it's going to take a lot of the bad stuff off the news channels, right? We're not talking about the crypto fraud that Trump is running. We're not talking about the Epstein files. There's a lot of stuff we're not talking about, but that nonetheless, this stuff is important. This stuff is very important, including the death of the young woman out of Renee out of Minneapolis. All of that is important. All of that is important, and we need to be talking about all of it, right? But here's the deal. Greenland specifically, even though a lot of folks have not yet learned it, it's sort of it's one of the most important things because it went from being a fad to a life of its own. And sometimes I wonder if this was always the intent of it, right? Lynette from Northeast Pennsylvania, welcome aboard. All right, so let me just say the Greenland issue is now made to be real. While we may have thought there was not much to this, it's a joke, etc., it is true that, other presidents have spoken about the importance of Greenland before, and it has been mitigated in many forms. But if for anybody who thinks this is just a fad, our president tried to, in effect, get his own vice president neutralized. We know that. And that same vice president, I want you to listen to what his thought process is with regards to Greenland. And by the way, it's not just him and the president. This is really the backing of the plutocracy, the wealthy folks that are funding these guys. But I want you to listen to this because when it's done, I have much more to say that's materially important. Check this out.
But the what here, I think, is absolutely in the interest of the United States of America. I mean, literally, I think it was Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State who negotiated the purchase of Alaska, who first suggested that the United States also purchase Greenland. I traveled to the region in 2019, visited Iceland to literally make the case of our national security interest as China and Russia continue to intrude farther and farther into the Arctic. So what the president's trying to do here, I think, is absolutely in the interest of the United States of America. I would just rather see the president use his persuasive powers and U.S. investment in Greenland to lay a foundation for ultimately achieving that goal.
As you know, we have a treaty with Denmark that allows the United States to build as many military installations on Greenland as the United States wants. There's one right there now, and there have been up to 17 in the past. French President Emmanuel Macron, in terms of how President Trump is attempting this, he posted on X yesterday in response to the president's threats of tariffs, quote, "No intimidation or threat will influence us, neither in Ukraine nor in Greenland nor anywhere else in the world when we are confronted with such situations," unquote. And that's Macron implicitly putting Trump and Putin on the same level Are you worried at all that how President Trump is making this play for Greenland is doing the U.S. more harm than good?
Yeah. Well, look, Denmark is a very strong ally of the United States of America. You know, I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. Our NATO allies, for the first time ever, used Article 5. They sent their own into harm's way to defend our country, which is what the NATO treaty requires. And no country lost more soldiers on a per capita basis than Denmark. But I do think that the current posture, which I hope will change and abate, it does threaten to fracture that strong relationship, not just with Denmark, but with all of our NATO allies. But this is not new. It's important that people understand. It was 2019. I think the president first mentioned buying Denmark, and the Danish prime minister, or I think referred to that as an absurd idea. And the president canceled a trip to Denmark. I ended up traveling to Europe a month later, and then to Iceland to make the case. So I really want to support the president's objective here. I want to encourage people around the country to recognize that we have an absolute national security interest in controlling and I think ultimately owning Greenland. But how we do that, I honestly believe, look, as you said, we've had a treaty with Denmark since 1951. We have a military base there now. There was a point in time where we had 10,000 troops in Greenland. Now I think it's about 200. I think one of the things that the administration could do is simply deploy forces into the region, because the threat that we are faced with continued Arctic incursions by China and Russia is real. The Golden Dome, which I think is a spectacular and visionary idea by the president, will require more real estate, including Greenland, to fully implement it. So we have a real interest here, but I'd rather see us making investments, and I think that would lay the predicate for the people of the territory and ultimately Denmark to finding a pathway forward to the United States being able to take Greenland off their hands.
All of our countries.
I want you guys to hear that. Take Greenland off our hands. I mean, do you understand what this guy is saying? Do you understand what this guy is saying? He's saying, well, Greenland belongs to Denmark, right? Denmark is, just like Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands or some, all these places that belong to the United States. If some other country decides, you know what, the Virgin Islands is important for the security of Great Britain because we don't have any place to put these Golden Dome that we need to protect England. So we're going to go to the United States and say, hey, sell us that land. And if you don't sell it, because it's our national interest, we got to take it. The vice president is saying that Greenland is of importance to the United States security, and therefore it must take it. Okay, let's take that a bit further, because he also used, we may need more real estate for the Golden Dome because that's the only way we can protect America. Wait a minute. All of that is false. We created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, as a consortium to protect these countries from what may occur. So it isn't true that the national security of America depend on it owning Greenland. And even if it were the case, your solution to your national security should not be appropriating the lands of others. Wait a minute. Isn't France in the path of an ICBM leaving China to get to the United States? Wait a minute. Oh my God. France is of vital importance to the security of the United States. We have got to invade France so that we can also extend the Golden Dome to France. Suppose it was France that we needed that land. Are we going to go ahead and invade France? Are we going to go ahead and invade Germany? It is ludicrous. And that the mainstream media hadn't said it. I expected Tapper to actually ask the question. The follow-up question should have been, are you saying that if France or any part of Europe, we need to build a golden dome there to protect an ICBM taking that particular path over to the United States, that we should conquer France, that we should conquer Germany, that we should conquer Spain? That the media doesn't bring that out to show the stupidity of the argument. That the media allows this to have some sort of plausibility or normalcy makes absolutely no sense. This is sick. And that we have right-wingers that are being used into believing there's some security reason why we need Greenland. There's none. Zero. Zilch. Nada. They want Greenland because the tech bros want their rare earths, and the oil companies want the oil that's likely fixed under there. That is what it's all about. This is all economic, and it's a theft. It would be a theft. And that is what we are standing for. Now, there is one reporter. Well, let me back up to that. This is theft, and that's what we're talking about. Now, there's one reporter, one host of a morning show, when Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, tried to make the same argument. He tried to make the same argument on Meet the Press, and what she did was a much better way of handling it. And I want you to see that now, and then we'll talk about it. What Kristen did on the other side. Let me go ahead and cue that up. Then we'll take it on the other side.
So America, has to be in control here.
I want to delve into everything that you said, but I just want to ask you big picture. Is this a negotiating tactic, Mr. Secretary, or is President Trump serious about annexing Greenland?
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen. And it might not be next year, might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. We would keep our NATO our NATO guarantees. And if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
But just very quickly, is this a negotiating tactic, Mr. Secretary? Is the goal to get a deal to have enhanced security in Greenland, for example?
The president believes that enhanced security is not possible without Greenland being part of the U.S.
Okay. Let me press you on what you have said are national security concerns, particularly as it relates to Russia and China. Senior Democrats say there are no pressing threats on Greenland's security from Russia or China. The Danish foreign minister says there hasn't been a Chinese warship in Greenland for a decade. What evidence do you have that this is a pressing threat? Well,
first of all, Kristen, we have asymmetric information. And again, President Trump is being strategic here. What evidence was there that the Russians were going into Crimea? What evidence was it? Well, actually, there was a lot of evidence that the Russians were going to go into Ukraine, and Joe Biden said, well, just take a little bit of it. But what we know is that the U.S., that Greenland can only be defended if it is part of the U.S., and it will not need to be defended if it is part of the U.S. The president is trying to avoid a conflict.
You bring up Crimea. The president, as far as I have heard, has not taken military force off the table. If the United States were to take Greenland by force, how would that be different than Russia's annexation of Crimea?
Look, I believe that the Europeans will understand that this is best for Greenland, best for Europe, and best for the United States.
So, but military action is still on the table?
I haven't spoken with the president on that. And again, I believe that the Europeans will understand that the best outcome is for the U.S. to maintain or receive control of Greenland.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete
So. In other words, the only solution is for us to own Greenland. Do you see? These guys believe that you all are so stupid. You have got to, if they repeat something long enough, the parrots that make up MAGA and the other weak-minded folks will simply say, yeah, we got to have Greenland. We got to have Greenland. Well, I mean, soon we're going to have Mexico, and soon we're going to have Canada. Because if these adjacent lands are a must-have for us to be able to build that golden dome, it almost goes without saying that we just have got to own the world to protect ourselves. Do you see how silly that is? Do you see how stupid that is? And that is what we expect. Man, in the last 2 days, I've used stupid, silly, and idiot a couple of times. That is not germane to do. That's not how I like to say things, but things are in such a position now that those are the best descriptive words. It is sad that there are people who are believing that. But you know what I love about what Kirsten just did? Kirsten asked the pertinent question. Isn't what Donald Trump wants to do with Greenland effectively the same thing that Putin did with Crimea, and likely Putin doing with as well with Ukraine? What is sad is they just lie for the sake of lying. Doesn't really matter. We are the hottest country. Really? Our economy is going bonkers. Really? And people just sit back and believe it. Sit back and believe it. Now, let me say, Donald Trump has been on a fraud kick recently. And this fraud kick, he thinks that he can fool all of you into believing that somehow the reason he's in Minnesota is because of that fraud from those dark people that are scamming some of the social welfare in Minnesota. Of course, there's fraud all around. And the kind of fraud that is occurring in Minnesota, which is bad, we should always go against fraud, is nothing compared to the fraud that he has done and fraud that he's used to. Now, Jake Tapper redeemed himself by about 10% with a little piece that he did after that. And I think it's apropos. So let's go ahead and show what he had to say about Donald Trump's fraud versus otherwise.
President Trump says he's worried about fraud, especially in Minnesota, when it comes to government spending.
We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on.
Especially in Democratic-led cities, he says.
They do everything possible to protect criminals at the expense of American citizens, and it breeds fraud.
You can be forgiven if you're having difficulty taking the president's concerns seriously after he issued new pardons this week for individuals with ties to his administration, according to the New York Times, after they were charged with or convicted of, you guessed it, fraud. Take Adriana Camberos. After Trump commuted her fraud sentence in his first term, she was convicted again of a different fraudulent scheme in 2024. She was pardoned on Thursday. The New York Times reports she enlisted the help of lawyers connected to President Trump, including one who previously represented Rudy Giuliani. Also pardoned this week, a banker facing charges, including felony bribery. That's pretty fraudulent. His daughter donated millions of dollars to Trump's MAGA super PAC. And then there's former healthcare CEO Terrence Scott Pizer, who also got a pardon after being prosecuted last year by Trump's own Justice Department for securities fraud and insider trading. Also fairly fraudulent. In case you were wondering, the New York Times reports his legal team also includes that same lawyer who has ties to Rudy Giuliani. There are more examples, but I only have a few minutes. The point stands: fraud is bad, regardless of who commits it, even if they find a way into the president's orbit and get a pardon.
And that is exactly what happened. These guys get pardons. These guys are crazy. That anybody would look into other people's fraudulent proclivities and not immediately put the scope on the president or put the crosshairs on the president, they're missing something. They're missing something altogether. We have the most corrupt president, bar none. No president that we ever had has been this corrupt. Not even Richard Nixon, which up until then has been our most outwardly corrupt president, bar none. Anyhow, interesting story. I want to put this one up on the screen. Interesting story, people. The President of the United States sent a letter to Jonas Garstor about here's a tweet. It says, POTUS letter to Jonas Store links Nobel Peace Prize to Greenland, reiterates threats, and is forwarded by the NSC staff to multiple European ambassadors in Washington. I obtained the text from multiple officials. And check out what the text says. Check this out. President Trump, dear ambassador, President Trump has asked that the following message shared with Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store be forwarded to your name head of government state. Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars, plus I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT. When we talk about toddler in chief, when we speak about toddler in chief, dummy in chief, troglodyte in chief, Neanderthal in chief, those names are not sufficiently descriptive of the person we have in office. He forgot that our claim to America is really a few boats landing here as well. And with that, we took America, we took the land that belonged to the indigenous, we took the riches that belonged to the indigenous. How do these people think? Please tell me, folks. I would love to know, how do they think? I want to read that part again. I got to read this part again. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia. And why do they get a right of ownership anyway? He says there are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago. All right, it's only that a boat landed in the Americas a few hundred years ago. But we had boots landing there too. Well, Spain, Holland, the Dutch had boats landing here too. I have done more for NATO. Okay, you've been in office. Look, folks, this is what we have for a president. And the rest of the world sees that this is the guy we elected at purportedly the most powerful nation in the world. Let me tell you something that we better come to grasp with rather quickly. While we have some sycophants out there that continue to try to defend this Neanderthal, while we have sycophants out there that continues to try to placate this guy or point out that this guy has some modicum of intelligence, remember there's the rest of the world. There's the other 95% of the world. And what the other 95% of the world has seen is they've said, my God, the most powerful country in the world, America, yes, check. They used to have the intellect running the country at some level. X, no longer. How can we put our faith, our prosperity, our well-being in the hands of that? How can we? We can't. And let me tell you what the rest of the world is doing. Germany is on a building binge. China has already built up their navy much larger than ours. But you don't see China patrolling around the world that we know of, at least, right? Just trying to exert their force. They know something about diplomacy, how to get honey from a bee, or rather, how to get bees with honey. They know. So they are not out there saying how big and bad they are, because the reality is there's nothing known as rugged individualism or rugged countryism, because every country is dependent on the other. What America wants to do is, if they think they need you too badly enough, maybe conquer you, steal your oil as they are trying to do in Venezuela, steal and rare earths, that is, steal the rare earths in Greenland. We have made the mistake for a second time. And I don't think we're going to get a chance to make the mistake the third time. The world has already begun reacting. They cannot do it overnight. Large gradients create catastrophic problems. Large gradients create issues. But the rest of the world is moving on slowly. They can't move too fast because while they're in flux, they don't want to lose too much. But the rest of the world is moving on. And our only salvation, believe it or not, is to start watching to see what's going to happen in the next election. If the next election is a squeaker, it's just as good as Republicans winning. If the next election we win by a little bit, it's just as good as Republican winning. Because the rest of the world would have said they still do not know. They still do not know how dire straits they're in. And it's a definitely move from the United States, not at a slow pace, but let's get the hell out of here. Let's get the hell out of here. I sit back so often and wonder, as a naturalized American citizen, as somebody from Central America. Let me tell you something, guys, and I've told many of you who've listened before, and I pointed this out in 2 books. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only solution to right-wing doom, and my other book called Tribulations of an Afro-Latino Caribbean Man. And that, in those 2 books, I pointed out, and I never forgot, when my grandfather, he came over to the United States on a merchant ship or something like that. And he came back to Panama and visited. And I remember him coming to the room, and he took his shoe off and sat down. And I remember picking up that shoe, turning it around, looking at the sole of that shoe, and saying, imagine this shoe walked in the United States. Imagine this shoe walked in New York. That's the kind of reverence people used to have for the United States of America. Yes, the United States of America was formed on an evil basis with slavery. Yes, the United States of America has a whole lot of sins to atone for. The murder of Indians, the genocide of of the native people, the mistreatment of the Japanese, the mistreatment of the Chinese. Oh, we have a lot of things to atone for, but ultimately we've constantly been moving in the right direction. Yes, we have to do something about an unfettered capitalist system that is killing people. But the one thing we had is that elastic clause in the United States Constitution that meant we could make things better. And even as it was written incorrectly, we constantly made improvements. I wrote or I was a part of a documentary called Democratize, Liberate a Democracy. And I remember when we did that documentary talking about our growth and little fall behind and growth and little legalized democracy is the name of the legalized democracy. It's the name of the documentary I was an executive producer of. And I remember when that documentary was written, that excellent director, and he did all those interviews that we did in that documentary. One of the tenets of that documentary wasn't that these founding fathers were infallible or were great guys. It was that they were good enough, just good enough to put that elastic clause in the Constitution, which means it could be modified fairly easy as long as we had good people in the world, in the state, in the country. And for a long time, we had good people in the country. And we got to modify that Constitution as it needed to be modified. But what we have right now is a degeneracy in this country. A degeneracy created by the Powell memo and think tanks who make sure to have infighting, who make sure to have the hate between people because they understand that the only hate in this country, the only people in this country that are deserving of paying a price are the wealthy folk who are orchestrating this entire malaise that America is going through right now. That's the only if we started to look out for each other, forget about that fallacy of rugged individualism that never, ever, ever, ever existed. Imagine what would happen. We would recover all that is ours. Jeff Bezos's billions is not his at all. Musk's billions is not his at all. None of these people earned that. It's a cloak in the economic system that allowed them to take our well-being. That is who's very scared that as people got intelligent, they would realize that all their effort and work went into somebody legally stealing your worth and your work. And while Lee the Bearcat has fallen for the false analogy, Egberto, how many have died due to socialism or communism? No less than those due to capitalism. No less. In fact, I can almost guarantee you that capitalism has killed more than any other economic system on this planet, bar none. Because you know what? Capitalism is the biggest abstraction engine. Anybody knows what an abstraction engine is? Tell me in the chat if you do know it, and then I'll explain it. Anybody knows what an abstraction engine is relative to capitalism? Does anybody know? Anybody wants to tell me? Anybody wants to call in at 281-823-7747 and tell me what the great abstraction of capitalism is? I would love to hear that. Somebody call in. Before I explain it, I want somebody to call in. Please call, please. 281-823-7747. Una vez más lo voy a repetir. One more time, I'm going to repeat it. 281-823-7747. What is a great abstraction of capitalism? Please call me. I've discussed this with Richard Wolff. I've discussed this with a couple of other economists that I've had on the program. Eric Love says efforts to how capitalism operates through layers of abstraction turn in real things, labor, goods, people, into generalized, quantifiable forms, money, data, value, to drive profit and accumulation. Brother Eric Love, that is a 99.9% answer, man. There's one piece that I want folks to realize. What the abstraction does is it ensures that the beneficiaries, the intermediate beneficiaries of capitalism, cannot even see the abstraction. As an example, as what the great Dr. Eric Love has had to say, right? Let's go ahead and get this call. Who do I have the honor of speaking to?
Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Talk to me, Shah.
Yeah, I wanted to just answer Egberto's question. It separates the actor from the consequences by many layers, and those with the consequences cannot reach those responsible and those with power. That's the abstraction.
Ding, ding, ding,
And
ding, ding,
yeah,
ding. You got it.
They do it with data,
you nailed it.
monetary instruments. Yeah.
Let me tell you, you nailed it. Let me tell you, brother Love expressed it in a technical term. And turn your radio down a little bit, Shasham. And you explained it in a very simple and distinct term, which is very necessary. Are you an economist?
Very simple and distinct term, which is very necessary. Are you an
I'm hearing myself.
No, I'm a lawyer, but I've done development work.
Okay, good. Well, you nailed it, girl. I appreciate your call. I'm getting repeats, so let's go ahead and hang.
I've done development work.
All right. Thank you very much. Go ahead and hang up the phone because we're getting the repeat. All right. Thank you very much for that call. She nailed it. She nailed it. Eric says capitalism drives its own rules, equating human activity to data values. And that is when you learn that, right? Let me tell you this, guys. When you learn that, you figure out that everything they told you about capitalism is false. Everything. And economists know it, but they can't say anything about it if they want to hold on to these particular types of jobs. And there's another thing that I always point out about the mathematical formula govern capitalism, right? And I'm going to give it in general terms. Capital is taxed at a lower rate than wages. Capital appreciation is taxed at a much lower rate than wages or the type of income the average American makes. Likewise, the capital owned by the regular American people are always taxed, and the capital owned by the capitalists are rarely taxed. Example, you own a home. Most of your wealth is in your home. Most of your wealth is in your home. And every year, you pay something called a property tax. And that's not a small tax at all. You know, thousands of dollars on your property, right? But the guy who owns real estate stocks, I want you to listen to this well, guys. If you own real estate tax and you keep that in your vault, you never pay taxes on it. So in effect, I can buy a house for myself, turn it into a stock, sell the stock or buy the stock, right? And never pay a dime in those particular stocks. So again, my dear brothers and sisters, we elect the people who create these laws that screw us. And we do that because we are uneducated, we are, or because we are resistant to education. Now, I am looking at a chat that is mostly filled with the educated, the folks who want to be educated, the folks who want to be enlightened. But there are a few that continuously try, instead of listening to what we're talking about, like Lady Bearcat says, again, Egberto, how many have died under socialist rule? What are we talking about here? We're talking about economic system. We're not talking about political systems here. And that they want to keep you confused. And I will tell you this: capitalism murders and kills every day. Every time somebody goes without insurance and die because of their illness, that's capitalism. Every day, every child that starves in America or is unable to get care and dies, that is capitalism. Everybody that's mining gold in Zambia, that dies or that suffers, that is capitalism. Okay, that is capitalism. Now, here's the interesting thing. The socialist country in the world, the biggest socialist country in the world, China, is in Panama as well. And they're building ports and they're doing things. And the people who are building the ports are getting a good salary, etc. They're inside of Angola and they're inside of Kenya. Yeah, there's some racial issues between the Kenyans and the Chinese, even though there's a hell of a lot of intermingling happening now. And at least they're not asking anybody to go ahead and slave labor themselves into rare earth production. You know, there's a guy that once told me, a Chinese guy, he travels here, and he said the following. He said, the difference between capitalism and the type of socialism they practice, he said, is our excess profits go into improving the lives of the people, right? That's why you see the middle class in China exceeds the total population of the United States. Listen again. The middle class of China, a country of 1 point something billion people, exceeds the entire American country when 60% of America is not middle class. Over 60% of America is not middle class. And China, the total middle class exceed the total population of the United States of America. I am not here singing China's praises. I'm not here saying they have a great system. I'm just telling you what the bottom line is. What will the effect of having too many males in China? The effect of having too many males in China is that they go out there and they bring other women into China as they're doing right now. You know, but again, I think a lot of that caste kind of system is kind of going away to some extent. But this is so important, because while we pat ourselves on the back and sing glory, glory, hallelujah, there's another world out there. And the American plutocracy, the American oligarchy is ensuring that you don't learn this stuff, because you're going to start asking questions. And there's so many of you, so many of you MAGA, the MAGA ones, that as opposed to just sitting back and say, oh my God, I have been wrong, I have been fooled, they made a fool out of me, let me atone for what I did, you continue to try to find reasons to continue to defend those who screwed you. If that isn't a bacchanal, that's a word we use in Panama. If that ain't a bacchanal, I don't know what the hell is. Patrick, my brother, says in the United States, black women are more than 3 times as likely to die from pregnancy-related complications compared to white women with a maternal mortality rate. That is capitalism, exactly. Paul Flemings from Politico. Trump is the first president not to issue an official proclamation recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. day since President Reagan made it a holiday. Doesn't surprise me. Alan Denson, how you doing, Alan? Says, well, you have to remember the whole aim of capitalism is monopoly. If you can't compete, then out you merge and acquire them outright. Exactly. Exactly. Anyway, we're coming to the end of the program. Anybody else want to give me a call? 281-823-7747. Thank you for that call earlier, my dear friend who called to give what the definition of abstraction and capitalism is. Thank you. I love when people call, but you guys like to chat and not call. But I like to hear your voices sometimes. Make me not feel, what is the word again, Patrick? I don't want to feel so alone. I don't want to feel so alone. 281-823-7747. We got a lot of work to do, folks. We have got a lot of work to do, but you know what I have faith in? That we're going to get the work done. Who do I have the honor of speaking with?
This is Bobby.
Hey, Bobby, talk to me.
I was curious. Did you hear that connection between, since it's MLK Day and everything? Did you hear that connection between MLK and Julia Roberts?
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful story, man. In other words, it's funny.
Yeah,
let me tell the story real quick. Let me tell you guys the story real quickly. And Ray Brackens is on as well. I'm gonna take both calls. Okay, all calls are connected. I'm gonna tell the story real quick. It turns out that Julia Roberts' parents owned a arts, like a actors guild or whatever you call it, something like that. And it was the only integrated one in Georgia.
Yeah.
So Martin Luther King's kids went to that particular place to learn their craft. It turns out that when that they paid a penalty for that, so they were losing money. So when Julia Roberts was in her mother's womb, the mother was ill and couldn't afford to go to the right doctors or whatever. So the King family paid for the delivery of Julia Roberts. And Julia Roberts has always had a thing for the King family because, again, while they kind of helped them out in the time of segregation when they needed, when they were in financial straits, the King family helped the Roberts family. That's a beautiful story. I tried to corroborate it before. That's why I never mentioned it, Bobby. I haven't completely corroborated it, but I've heard it before.
I checked it on Chat GTP and it said it was correct. Yeah, I'm still here.
Good.
Oh, yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Now we also
am I still
have
here?
Brother Rick.
Okay. The other thing.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing, the extraction thing. Like somebody was talking about, like, if you have $20 cash and the $20, it might be from 20 years ago. It's been through thousands of transactions, and it's still worth $20. Where nobody carries cash anymore. So every time we make a purchase, let's say we have $20 worth of buying power, after the credit card companies charge their fee to the that each time a little chunk is taken out, so that after 20, 50 purchases, that $20 now is all theirs because of each time they're taking a little bite. And to me, that was a big
Bobby, let's talk about
example.
that another time, but you're absolutely right with that example. I got Brother Ray on the line as well. Ray, talk to me, my brother. How you doing?
Okay.
I'm good, brother. I'm just joining you all on this MLK Day, which sadly you have brought it to my attention that the occupant of the White House, known as the president, did not proclaim MLK Day as he should, since Reagan, of course.
Paul
That's ironic that Reagan. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to say I'm still on board with what you say. It's antiseptic slavery. They have to pay us something, and unlike slaves, which you own and you have to clothe them and feed them, employees require less maintenance, and you can fire them at will.
There you go. Slaves were a lot more expensive than employees. So employees are the new slaves. Well, thank you, Ray. We are at the end of the show. I appreciate you listening, and remember, folks, keep sharing. Ray, let's talk tomorrow, okay?
All right. Appreciate you, brother. Take care.
Take care, brother. All right, folks. Anyway, we are at the end of the program. Please do remember that this program and this this newsletter and all that we do, we cannot do it without you. And we are at a cross point now. And let me tell you better, we have to educate and we have to win big this year. We are at a what I always call a flex point. Others have different ways of identifying that. And those of us in the independent media, we need you. I know there's people who are having a hard time, but my friends, uh, we all have to do all of this together. There's nothing called rugged individualism. That's a fallacy. There's nothing called rugged individualism. The ones who are telling you to be a rugged individualist, they're the ones most dependent on you. Don't believe the crap. So let me ask you, if you at any time can become, in fact, I'd love you to do that now, become a paid subscriber of our Egberto Off the Record newsletter. That subsidizes everything that we do. Please consider becoming one today. If you're on Substack, just click the subscribe button and become a paid subscriber, or you can go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, which I just placed in the into the link into the system. We can't do this without you. It's all on you, really. Uh, 24 hours a day? Well, actually, not really 24. I do the 16 hours a day, between 12 and 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, cutting videos and making sure that we do as much in educating as we can, writing, etc. My new book, I've finally made some progress on my new book. And remember, all subscribers read all my books for free when they subscribe, and it's on the Substack network. But my book is coming out. Remember I told you this weekend I had to spend some time writing it, and I got quite a bit done over the weekend. I probably got about 50 pages in on that. So folks, don't you forget, please support the program however best you can. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this, baby. I am what? Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.